years. On the radio show. Been on Real Animals a bunch. I know you've been on other fishing shows.
Yeah, I did one good one last 2 weeks ago.
So, without further ado, Mr. Jason Prieto.
How you guys doing? As he said, my name's Captain Jason Prieto. My boat's right here. Not the yellow one, it's the other one.
It's not the one with the U on the side.
I guide full-time out of here. I also do radio. I don't know if you guys listen. We're on Saturday and Sunday from 8 to 9 on 1040 NBC Sports. And me and my partner Danny Wright and Larry Malinowski, which some of you guys know, he's not a captain, but he used to be, write the South Shore edition of the Tampa Tribune, and also write for Onshore, Offshore, and Gap Magazine. So you might see some of my stuff floating around here and there. Tonight we're going to talk redfish. Well, you asked me what we're going to talk about, and the redfish bite has been probably the best that I've ever had for wintertime. Yesterday we've been leathering out with 4 people on the boat every day. Typically this time of year you get a lot of small reds. If you guys fish a lot in the winter, it's not uncommon to get small, what we call rat reds, 16, 15 inch. For whatever reason, I've been catching bigger reds. I don't really understand why I'm catching bigger reds, but I'm not complaining. So there's a lot of different ways in the wintertime to target reds. It's pretty similar to what we typically do in the summer, or not the summer, the spring and fall. Summertime, your water temperature climbs. You're reaching the upper 80s on the flats. You'll get some reds on the flats throughout the summer. You get reds, in the hottest part of the summer. A lot of times you're fishing early morning. You're fishing, up in the trees on the shade line. This time of year, I've been fishing exclusively the river for the most part, Little Manatee River. There are plenty of reds down south, Cockroach, all the way down to Joe's Island, all the way up to the Kitchen. The problem that you run into this time of year is your highest tides are at night. You mix a low tide during the day with a north wind blowing 15 to 20, and you don't have any water. Low tides, over the last, I'd say 3 years, I've grown accustomed to loving low tides for the most part. I used to hate them. Low tides to me, I used to hate them because there was less places to fish, but what I figured out is there's less places for the fish to go. So, if you got a pothole and there's 6 inches of water around the pothole, as long as you can get in there without, blowing the ditch to get there, the fish are going to be in that pothole. Where on high tide, there might be 50 fish on this flat. Well, they're all in the pothole on low tide. On high tide, they're scattered. So I just really like fishing these low tides. And the same spring patterns are about the same. I think the reds across the board are going to get bigger going into spring. And then as you get into the late spring, early summer, your tides typically are higher. You get +3 high tides and stuff like that, so your fish get up in the bushes more. But I like to fish a lot of these potholes, just fish your tides. Joe's Island's a great place down there. You can get in there on pretty low tide. There's some areas in Cockroach you can get into on low tide. A lot of the stuff is tough to get to on low tide. That's where the river's nice. One of the great things about that river, and it grows across the board for snook, reds, and trout, is we're getting the slams pretty much just about every day, except for today. I didn't have a very good day, which I used shrimp, and we just had 3 kids on the boat, so it was tough. But it's not uncommon to get a slam. Typically a slam is, inshore slam is snook, redfish, and trout. This time of year, it's typically pretty easy. Some of the slams range small, some of them range bigger. But I would say I fished St. Pete a lot. I fished over here since I was a kid, and I quit fishing Gandy because greenbacks are just too hard to get. But there's good fishing up that way too. But that Little Manatee River is probably one of the best areas I've ever fished across the board certain times of year. And John, I'm sure you would vouch for that. That's your backyard, literally. It's just the tide flow there is awesome. If you don't know where you're going, you'll find the sandbar real fast because there's one on every bend, and it's just loaded with fish. If you look on the banks and you see all these oysters on the low tides, that's what's underneath you. It's just good habitat, and it draws for a lot of fish. It draws for a lot of redfish. That river is nursery to a lot of fish in there. a lot of the areas that I've been fishing, like I was telling, these low tides are the main bends in the river. Certain areas have oyster bars underneath. One of the best things I could tell people when they're looking to find spots is find spots. How I found some of these spots is, on my off days, when I started guiding, I had a lot of spots, but I'd go out and put my time in. I'd get on the trolling motor on extreme low tide, and you'll have a lot of banks. First off, you'll see good spots for summertime, and guys have probably heard this on seminars, but it's true. You'll see an area where it's all land on extreme low tide, and you'll have a little bit of water in that spot, and there's a little ditch going in and out from the tide. Even though you can't fish that right now, that's a good spot for on a high tide in the late spring or fall. The other thing you do is you run these edges, and you'll see where there's redfish like the rocky oyster bottom. They're in the sand bottom too, but I typically like to target the rocky oyster bottom. Get on your trolling motor. If you got a day, where the good thing is too, if you're, and I'm going to say specifically in this river, but it pertains to anywhere, there's easy access. That means if you got a day where it's blowing 20 knots, which isn't a very good fishing day, if you got a north wind blowing 20 knots and you got a low tide at 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have no water anywhere except for the main spans in the river. If you got one of the high pressure days where it's a bluebird day, all you got to do, you don't have to have a tower. Get your boat, get on a trolling motor, and just start working. Just go through areas that you want it to scout. Look at the bottom. You see oyster bottoms, make a mental note of it. Mark it on your GPS. These areas are going to hold fish. One other thing that I see people do, I see people fishing the same spots I'm fishing, but they're not fishing it at the right tides. They're not, they're on the wrong tide. When you get to a spot and you find it, it's a point, or it's an oyster bar, or it's a cut, it's a crevice, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. On your tide flow, look and see, what is the tide doing? Is it running hard? Is it creating an eddy? An eddy is the perfect. If you got an eddy somewhere and you get good bottom, there's going to be fish there, especially snook. They don't like to sit in the current. They're going to sit in the eddies and whack the bait as it comes out. There's numerous spots in that river that I see people fishing. They're not going to catch much there. It's the wrong tide. So pay attention to what your tide flow is doing, because that all draws fish. Any of your points, cuts, crevices, creek mouths are great spots to fish. It's a highway for fish to come in and out. When you're in between the tides, maybe not on a real low tide, but an outgoing or incoming, fish the back side or the front side, depending on what the tide's doing, of these creek mouths. They're going to use these as highways as to travel in and out. A few good baits I'm going to cover. Artificials, there's nothing better than catching redfish and artificials. Nothing better. I particularly like one mirror lure here. Mirror lure is a good product. I just don't throw a whole lot of hard baits. This is the Miradine. I know these are good. I can't remember the other one that I use. I just grabbed. I can't remember the name of it. The mirror lure products are good for hard baits. I'm probably going to cover more on the soft plastics, because that's what I throw a lot. I use a lot of the Z-Man stuff. These are good. This color right here is my go-to white, which is pretty much everybody's go-to. But the pearl white and the minnow Z is for trout is awesome. This is also good. I didn't bring the other color. There's one color. It's like a chartreuse with gold flakes, and I don't know why it works great, especially in the river. But these are little paddle tails. They call them minnow Z's, the Z-Man stuff. And the DOA stuff makes great baits. A lot of your major brands are going to make good baits, but I will show you something about these baits that I like. And I haven't seen one do it, but you can take this one and stretch it. I broke it, but I stretched it that far. And it doesn't, that's the main part. So they last a lot, they last longer than a lot of the other baits, I will say that. But these minnow Z's are good baits. For the redfish, especially if you guys are fishing, I know John's got an extreme shallow running boat. He fishes a lot of really shallow water. These jerk baits, jerk shads, but it's a weedless setup, and that right there has got an awesome action to it. And again, I like the Pro White, but there's any colors, any of the new pennies. I'm not real big on the crazy colors.
That one there, how are you fishing that one, that weedless rig?
It's just a
slowly popping it, or
just real pop, and what it'll do, it'll dart like this. If you got, now, based on your, and you guys ask questions as I go, because I'm going to overlook stuff just because I do this every day, and it's, you know, it's just what I do. But if you have any questions, just ask, I'll answer, because there is going to be some stuff that, and don't think it's a dumb question, it's not. I'll definitely answer it to the best of my ability. But this right here, it's more of a quicker reaction bait. If you're fishing shallow water, and this is weighted, you can see that right there. There's a couple different brands, of two that I have. This is what they call, Daiichi makes a butt dragger. I did use these. What I don't like about these, this one right here, when you put it on, it just slides on. And it's got these little, it's sharp too. It's got these little, little things that hold it on there, so you can just slide it on. This right here has got like a, I don't know if you can see, it's like a little twist, and you got to sit there and screw it. And it can be a real pain, especially with these baits, because these baits are real soft. I can't even get them on here, so I like these a little better. And this, you can see the weight right there. It crimps on and off, which is kind of convenient, but to me, if I'm a fish, I think that looks a little more natural. I'm not a fish though, so. But this is an 1/8 ounce. You can go without a weight, depending on, I usually like an 1/8. Typically, this is a shallower water rig. If you're fishing the summers for reds, throwing up underneath the trees, this has got a really good action. This bait actually won me some money during the redfish, not a lot, but we took 6th place, and I was throwing this. And actually, I wasn't throwing the Z-Man, I was throwing the Zoom bait, which is a bass bait. And we were whacking, we probably caught 15 reds that day. Unfortunately, my first one was about 7-3. I almost got big fish in the tournament. Second, the next 15 were all like 24-inch was the problem. But that day we caught trout. We caught a slam on this one bait, and I was just working the trees. So it's a really good bait. And like I said, I use the Z-Man stuff. Any of the baits are good. They're all, DOA makes some great products out there. Another combination, I didn't have one at home. These right here are some of the, and these are expensive, but these are some of the best floats that I've ever used. And this is a new one they just come out with. It's called a back bait. It's actually designed like a popping cork. It gives and this is their traditional Cajun Thunder. This one's got a little bit more of a popping sound. They just released these. I think it's a little bit better. It doesn't wrap as bad sometimes when you're using a live bait. But these, tied underneath the DOA shrimp, are really good baits. DOA makes a kit that you can buy. But, I mean, that's how they originally got it. These are great trout baits, redfish too, depending on the situation. So I use these a lot, pretty much all year. I don't use these too much if I'm fishing swift tide areas typically. These are good on the flats. I haven't been using them much. But you tie these underneath the DOA shrimp, a regular shrimp. Even you can tie these minnow Z's underneath them. They work good on an 1/8 ounce. You know what? I got the color right here. It's tied on my rod. What I did, I brought two sets of rods into. This is actually, it looks beat up because it is beat up because this is what I use on my charters. I brought this a little higher end reel that I use, and these are my charter reels, which are middle of the road. That is a color right there that I do really well with inside the Little Manatee River with redfish. So, and all that is an 1/8 ounce jig. Sometimes I'll step it up to a 1/4 ounce because it's deeper, the deeper bends, depending on the area I'm fishing. But and you were asking about working the jerk baits. These are just more of a you just kind of bump off the bottom, just kind of, and it'll just pop. And that a lot of times, if you're in sand, this thing will throw up a little puff of sand, or that tail actually gives a vibration which attracts fish. Right now, I haven't been throwing much artificials, but I'm going to start in the next couple weeks. There's still some white bait around. That has been the ticket for the bigger redfish for me. We had a 28 yesterday, which is extremely big for this time of year, and a 32 the other day. Yeah, I was actually surprised, and we lost a couple that were big, and we had a lot of 22, 24-inch reds, which is pretty good for this time of year. The white bait has been the ticket for me. I fished shrimp today. We got some of the smaller reds. You'll get a lot of reds, it seems like, but you'll get a lot of the smaller ones. The problem with shrimp, it's a great bait. It's everything eats shrimp, from pinfish to crabs to, I mean, so, you know, and when you go in there and you got the white bait, you're kind of an advantage because some of the areas I've been fishing are actually, the tide's ripping real hard and these fish are running through on the oyster beds up there. But, you know, unloading 50 chum baits at them, it'll kind of let them sit in there a little bit and start getting in that feeding zone. But the white bait's been good. This is a typical, this right here, I'm going to break down the rods a little bit. I like to cover tackle because, yeah.
On the one popping cork with the rod.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any trouble with those bending?
Yeah, this one's bent.
Do you just straighten them out?
Straight back.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to bend, especially when you're fishing greenbacks, because the greenback sits there and twirl like this. And they'll wrap up in the bobber, and then sometimes you'll hook a redfish, and the redfish will bend the bobber because it's wrapped like that. But, you know, these things will last. I mean, I fish 250 days a year, and I'll go months on the same bobber. I've actually fished them to the started, like, the foam started coming apart, the styrofoam on it, so.
Hey, I'll tell you how good you can get with those bad boys. You break a fish off of that bobber hanging, especially a big redfish. You throw another popping cork out there with a greenback on it and let that fish swim around that bait. You'll pull on that redfish, won't you, Mike?
Yeah, that's it.
And I believe that was your popping cork I did it to too, wasn't it?
These bobbers are very strong. They actually make a blue water, and I got my first tarpon on one of these. And the guy that has the company advertises with us, and he's a talker. Anybody knows has talked to him. He's actually out of Texas, but he gets, try it on the tarpon. I'm thinking, man, this thing is, I don't see it holding up to a 100-pound tarpon. And I had one tied on, and we were on a school of fish on the beach, and I was sight casting him, and I couldn't get him to eat. And I just chucked that. I said, let me see this thing, and I flipped it out there, and we had a thread fin, and I popped that thing like 3 times, and the fish, I mean, it was crystal clear. You actually seen him just kind of, he was in the school, and he turned, and I twicked it like, you know, a nice pop, and you just seen the tarpon turn. It was the coolest thing because seeing a 100-pound fish come up and, you know, actually turn out of the school to eat it was pretty neat. And it held up to, it was about a 100-pound fish, and he ended up spitting the hook right by the boat on the jump, but we fought him for an hour. So the strength of these things is good. He told me, I can't remember, he's got some technical stuff that he tested them on swordfish or something. I don't know about all that, but I can tell you they held up to a 100-pound tarpon. This is what they call the Cajun Thunder. I was using the Blue Water Thunder, which is a thicker gauge wire. So, but these beads do make a difference, the clacking noise. What I don't like about them is, for me, it doesn't affect you guys. For me as a charter captain, I got 6 rods. If I got 4 guys, I have to untie and tie back to a free line bait. So that can be a hassle, but it's, I went back to clip-on bobbers for a while, but the clip-ons just, they're junk. The springs wear out and they just get aggravating. So I primarily use them, and they do make a difference. I mean, a popping cork works great. That works better. It's kind of like mono worked great for years, but braid's better. I mean, you know, it's not that it doesn't work, it's just that it's better. Yeah.
Is there ever a time that you wouldn't want the noise of clacking?
Yeah, if you're fishing a school of redfish that's spooky, which we don't get, and John might argue because he push pulls so much, we don't get the schools of redfish over here. That I fish St. Pete, and then you talk about schools, there's schools over there. Over here, we'll get a school, and if we do get a school, they don't stay. I mean, they're there for a day, gone the next. Over there, it's a little easier. But if you're fishing a school of reds over there, a lot of times it's free line. They're real finicky. You're not doing chumming. The good thing is when you find a school over here, they're what I call green. You throw some chum out there, you can work them a little bit. You can.
They don't tail over here either.
No, very few times I've gotten them where they tail. They're just, I don't know. And everybody used to blame it on. Everybody's running the flats, and I don't think that's it because there's not that many boats on the flats.
I've fished here I'm 58 years old. I've been on these flats all my life. I've only seen one tail and red my whole lifetime on this side of the bay.
Yeah, I've maybe seen one time, and I fished. There is some good schools over here. Don't get me wrong. Certain times of the year, they're just very sporadic. A lot of the schools, you hear somebody say that they seen a school. To me, a school's 50 or more fish, not 10. Right. I mean, there are schools, but like John said, he was on some fish, and at the area he was fishing, but they're scattered, like right. 5 here, 5 there, and it's great, kind of, if you're using white bait, because you can anchor up and just start chumming, and you'll get them fish running by. But you're not. I mean, you go over to St. Pete, down in Anna Maria, Sarasota, you'll see a school of 300, 400, 500 fish. I mean, it's going to be a wad to where you're like, wow. You know, and they're all huge. St. Pete's gotten fished hard over the last 6 years. The schools get broken up and they're smart. You got to really know what you're doing over there. Yes, sir.
Do you chum and get manatee?
What's that?
Do you chum and
With white bait? Is that you're saying, do I chum with white bait?
or whatever? I mean, do you?
Yeah, I usually chum with white bait. Typically, sometimes I've thrown, shrimp out, get a few out there.
Explain to him how you chum, because, some of them think of a chum bag.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
I got
That's
you.
what he's
See, and
thinking.
again, this is where I was telling you, overlook stuff. Chumming is, and for you guys that don't know that, when I go get bait, I typically got 500-600 baits in my well. Probably 3/4 of it goes out for free. We got these bats that you buy. You'll probably see them half cut, look like little. You just put 10, 15, 20 baits, and you cripple them.
right.
You just chuck them out there. So now you got all these baits going crazy on the surface. Well, if there's any fish that's somewhat hungry, that's what usually gets them going.
And the cool thing about those bat guys, all it is, those big fat wiffle ball bats? All you do is just cut one off at an angle. Make it look like a needle point. You sit there and you crush them up, put them in there, you sling them one hand. Typically, you only want to put about 10 in there, because you put in more than 10 in there, they're not going to go far. You put the lower the amount, the farther you can chunk them. So you put 10 in there, you put your fist in there and crush them up real good where they're just sitting there crippled. As soon as you chunk them out there, get ready, because they're going to start blowing up on them.
What are you throwing out?
The white bait.
Okay.
You taking that
Greenbacks,
white
you're-
bait, taking your dip net.
You obviously don't want to do that with shrimp too much. It'll cost you a lot of money. South Shore Bait and Tackle will probably like it, but that's one method of chumming. There is another method of chumming, which is with a chum block. We don't do that on the flats. That is something you would probably do if you're shark fishing on the flats, or if you're out there cobia fishing at the runoff. That's where you get a chum slick going, or snapper fishing or something like that.
Could you use something like that, a chum block back in that little manatee and let it thaw and then?
Could you? Yeah, I do. I know. I don't know if it'd be too productive there.
You use it to casting that bait.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's a lot easier way to do that and cheaper. They have what I use. There's a couple different methods. I use a just Purina 45. You buy it at Fish for Stuff.
For fish stuff.
I can't say.
That's okay.
Four
That's
Fish
a
Stuff has
sponsor
got
that we
it.
share.
Ace has got it. A lot of the feed stores have got it. It comes in a 50-pound bag. You mix a little bit of water with it, and that's how you chum your bait up. Right now, there's no secrets. There's still bait at the Skyway. A lot of the range markers had it about 3 weeks ago, but it's gone. But getting white bait is going to definitely increase your odds of catching. But I can tell you, catching a redfish on this bait, or any of these baits, especially this jerk bait, it is awesome, because they seem to hit this when you're typically using white bait. A lot of times you're chumming an area, you'll see them boil up, and you basically got this rig with just a regular one-on hook, which I didn't bring, and it's free lining out there. So when they come in and hit that bait, because the redfish hits on the run almost all the time, when they hit that bait, you got slack in your line, and then you set the hook. Well, when you're working a jig and you're sitting there twitching it, real twitch, he comes and hits it, you're already, there's no give. So when he hits it, you get to feel that initial punch that he gives you, and it's pretty cool. I really enjoy catching redfish and artificial. I mean, I wish you could catch them on artificials as good as you can white bait, and you can. I mean, redfish are suckers for artificials too. It just makes it easier, especially as me being a charter captain, throwing white bait. But they're trout and redfish will eat artificials real good. Actually, trout is one of my favorite to do artificials, because you can catch so many of them. A lot of the areas in Cockroach have got a lot of trout right now. Mirror Bay, somebody said Mirror Bay, that canal's loaded with trout. The problem there is all the boat traffic coming in and out of the canals over there. Joe's Island's got some trout. DeSoto's loaded with trout. It's not uncommon to go catch 50 trout over there on one section of a flat. Now, a lot of them will be 15, 16 inch, but it's a starting point. If you're new to throwing artificials and you don't know how to do it, ladyfish would probably be the first to get your technique down. Trout is probably your second. Once you get that technique down and the hook set and the head, because most all your fish, especially on this bait, I wouldn't say so much the jerk bait, because this is more of a popping. You reel and you pop up, so you're bouncing it up like this. Where this is more of a, if you're throwing that jerk bait, you're kind of reeling and twitching, reeling and twitch, real twitch. So you're pulling versus popping up and down. On this bait here, 99% of your strikes are going to come on the fall. So you're not going to really feel the hit on this one, exception for a redfish because they hit it so hard. But a trout and stuff, that typically you're going to feel a thump. But the thump is going to be on slack line. So it really gives you get the feel for it with the trout and ladyfish, because it does take a feel.
You got a question over here?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
This is a strange question, probably. I've been out, been in 5 years and been out with 4 or 5 guides. Typically, we've been doing chunking stuff and leaving it in front of a school coming through.
Okay. What areas
And
were you fishing?
They're gonna, mostly Terracia and, Terracia. And, they just come by and find it and take it. I've not ever fished to, attract it and have it strike it. In other words, instead of ground feeding or bottom feeding, to have them actually strike it like.
He's throwing chunks of ladyfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Well,
like that.
that's another great technique.
But when do you do which one and that sort of thing?
Well, it depends on the area. Again, if I'm fishing Fort DeSoto, I'm rarely chumming. The fish are just they'll spook. A lot of times we're using cut ladyfish, cut pinfish on them schools over there. Sometimes they eat cut mullet. Them fish are crazy over there. I've seen somebody next to me catch them on shrimp, and I can't get them on anything. It just depends on what they're eating. It depends on the area, depends on time of year. Typically, rule of thumb, if you're fishing in the dead heat of the summer for redfish, June, July, there's still some big schools of redfish around. You want to probably go cut bait. The fish are going to not exert a lot of energy. Any other time, rule of thumb, you're probably spring, fall, winter. And going deep into the winter, we're just having a mild winter. Typically, I'm throwing artificials for reds and using shrimp. I tend to lean to artificials just because I enjoy it more. Shrimp is a very effective way. It's a very slow way to fish. I mean, you just throw it out there and you feel the pinfish pecking at it, and then, occasionally you get a great fish. And sometimes I have novices where I just can't teach them. I mean, you got to have some kind of base knowledge before and for me it's tough. But if I had my choice, I'd love to have clients that can cast, and I can put them with artificials. But right now it's a mild winter, so the whitebait's around. So I would say summertime, very hot, go to the cut bait. Spring and fall. If you're on the South Shore, the redfish that are around, I don't think you have to cut bait them. I don't think they get enough pressure on an individual school because there is no individual school. They're all scattered. They might get caught, but the fish that are fishing over there, there's 400 fish. I mean, we've literally had 10 guideboats lined up on them. And everybody, I was over there in September. I told some customers, I said, look, these reds, they just moved in off the Gulf, in over to St. Pete. We caught 50 reds. I'm not exaggerating. The guy's arm, was bulging. And they were all 30 to 35 inch. And that day we were chumming them because certain moon phases, and that's where it gets technical. Certain times when they first come in, they're just feeding on everything. They're in that spawn period. But there was 4 boats that all caught 50 redfish. We emptied, I got a 50-gallon well, and I probably had 600 baits. We emptied the well catching fish. And that situation was what they were biting. But 2 days later, they wouldn't bite on it. We had to go to cut bait, and we only caught a few. So it kind of just depends. But the fish over there, the school's like 400 or 500 fish when it's big, but it's the same school. So they're constantly pressured. Now there's some schools you might find if you find one on your own, great. I found some schools out here in Cockroach in August, and they were eating anything, and there was about 2 of us for a few days. The problem was the school was just all over the place. It was to the point where typically you hear you want to have a stealthy approach, use trolling motor, push pull. These fish were on the move. They were in 3 foot of water, and you had to fish them like mackerel. It didn't matter. They were going faster than trolling motor. And I tried to get on the trolling motor. I couldn't find them. And they were all like 35, 36 inches. I just went on my motor. I said, throw in them. It was like, fishing bonita or something in the bay. It really was. But that's a different
Straight
situation.
bass.
For the most part, you're not going to get that. I think when these fish first move in the spawn, and they start moving on the flats from coming in from the Gulf and all that, I think they're just in a feeding frenzy. So you have to, each situation is different.
I'll say this, if we catch a ladyfish, we're going to cut it up. We're going to it's not uncommon for us to be using the baits, the artificials, but take one pole and sit it right in the rod holder drag be almost wide open and just listen for it to sing. And whoever's closest to it,
I would tell you this, I've been guiding a long time, run a lot of trips, I don't know what it's about every day. With fishing, it's the little things that make a difference. Everybody's got base knowledge, but I can tell you that it's, for me, it's literally little things that make me catch fish on a day and not catch fish. And the only way, there's no easy way around it, knowledge. Knowledge and just learning. You know, John's probably got more, I know he's got more hours than me because he's almost twice my age, but
Nice.
but
And
you
I
know,
earned that.
but you know, it's just, and he's a fly fisherman. I got on his boat, I would be as lost as, probably be his worst customer. Because the reason why I would be his worst customer, because I have a premeditated way of way I want to do it, because I'm already captain, and it would probably be all wrong because I don't fly fish. So, with that being said, it's just knowledge. So it's little things. Really pay attention to detail. If you fish a spot and you have a good day, this is the best information I give you. If you fish a spot and you have a killer day, don't go home and say I had a killer day. Figure out why, dissect it. Why did it have a killer day? What were the tides? What was the pressure doing? Pressures and fronts are big. Where moon phase was I in? What, you know, pay attention to the tide at that spot. Not just I was in the river and I had incoming tide. No, I was at this spot. Before I was guiding, I'll tell you what I did. I had a chart. And it sounds kind of corny, but it worked. And I actually turned this into a little system. And I'd fish. I fished 3-4 days a week. I worked nights, and that's when gas was $1 a gallon. And, you know, you could go fishing for $20. And I would go fish, and I'd have spots more. I'd fish a spot, 53. I'd have a little red dot on my chart. 52 on this spot. And I have a little program on my computer, caught fish. I'd do a log, and I had this, and it was simple, but it, you know, I did a little thing on work, water temperature, tide, moon phase, you know, the date. And actually, I think I still got it. I don't go by it anymore because it's like embedded in my head. But on spot 53, I knew that on incoming tide, I caught fish here. On spot 58, I knew that on outgoing tide with a certain moon phase, I caught fish. And if you do this, and then you go back 5 years later, you'll find out that fish are very pattern-like. The only thing that'll change is, and John knows this as anybody has, you go through spurts. Like, I think we're on a warmer winter spell. The last 4 years, we're on a cold winter spell. So you have to pay attention to the weather. Weather's a big changer. Water temperatures, big, huge. I get in the boat, people ask me at the tides, I say, I don't know, let me kick my GPS on. I mean, I know the tides, I kind of know them, but I've gotten lazy. I'll look at my GPS, it'll tell me my tides, and I know, okay, these spots over here go on incoming, these are on outgoing. They say, well, people call me all the time about a charter, what tide do you want to fish? I say, oh, let's just go fishing. I've got 100 spots in here. You know, some are good on incoming, some are good on outgoing. Some are good in this river on almost slack tide, where I've been getting a lot of these reds on one spot. It's almost impossible to fish it because the tide rips in that river. It's almost impossible to fish. When the tide was almost stopped and on the turn, the redfish was turning on. I mean, just one after another the last 3 days. So sometimes people say don't fish slack tide. Well, it depends on the situation. So, and all that comes just trial and error. So you guys get out there. I mean, if you want to catch fish, if you want to go out and have a good time, that's great. But if you want to get better at catching fish, turn it into a little bit of work. Not a lot of work, but a little bit of work. Have a program, a plan, and it'll all start working for you. How much time we got?
as much as you want, bud.
I'm gonna real quick. I'm gonna cover this and then whatever questions you guys have that I didn't cover. And we're talking about redfish. Redfish in general, you want light tackle. This right here is not big. You guys that have Dennis Seminar are freaking hear me say this again. Not a very big reel. 40-inch redfish, 40-inch snook. Anything on the flats, pretty much you can catch with this. It's light, which means I can throw this, hold it with 2 fingers, pretty much all day, and my arm's not going to be killing me. My heavy net that I throw that's 30 pounds kills me enough in the morning. I don't need to have a heavy rod. So you don't need heavy stuff. I've downsized. Braided line has changed. Braided line has changed the way I fish, and it's changed the way a lot of people fish. Before braided line, you couldn't use a reel quite that small. This thing only shows, well, you could. It only shows up to 8-pound diameter line that it holds. With braid, this is 10-pound, 10-3. I actually got one that's got like 1 pound. That's a little thin. 1 something. But this stuff here, you can't break it with your hands. It's fins. It's a 10-pound strength, 3-pound diameter. That's what I use, 25-pound leader. But with the braided line in general, you're able to downsize your tackle and still be able to fish a little bit bigger fish. The drag systems on these are like and a lot of people have the misconception on a reel of, I get a bigger reel, it's got a better drag. Start doing some research on drag systems. This is a 2500, it's got the same exact drag tension on max drag as a 3500, I'm pretty sure. I know the 3000 is the same. Matter of fact, what Daiwa started doing on their reels, the 2500 is a 3000. They just send you a bigger spool. So if you start doing some homework on reels, your drag tension is basically close to the same on a lot of reels. So you start getting to the real big stuff. And drag tension, people say they got all this drag tension. There's not a whole lot. I think a Shimano bait runner's got 19, I think it's 19 pounds at lockdown. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. That's a 6500 tarpon reel. So I think this is like 8 pounds or something. So, and the other thing, when you ask yourself, how many times have you had your drag locked down? If you say always have it locked down, well, you're messing up. This right here is your best drag. Using that finger right on the drag, that's what's going to make you or break you on catching big fish. So downsizing your tackle is always good on the flats. Using light line. This is an 8-foot rod. I really like limber rods. This is a good live bait rod. You probably go a little stiffer if you're throwing artificials, but this is a good all-around rod. This is not a real expensive setup. This rod retails for 75 bucks. The reel's probably 100. So it's not a real expensive set. It's not cheap. Don't go buy the Mickey Mouse stuff, but don't go buy the the Shimano Stella, because that's just for the guy that drives the Maserati. If you guys got a Maserati, then you could probably go buy you a Stella. But it's not going to make you catch any more fish. So, and the difference is there's about 100. This reel's about 150. This rod's about 150. It's $100 difference, and this is my reel, and this is my guide reel. There's not a whole lot of difference, to be honest with you. The rod's a little bit better, but not that much. But, you know, I like the 8-foot rods. If you're doing a lot of live bait fishing on the flats, 8-foot's good. If you're throwing a lot of artificials at docks, and you get a little bit more control with a 7-footer with a little bit stiffer tip. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do. But having your tackle, decent rods and reels is going to also be good for you. If you're throwing artificials, who's throwing artificials for a whole day? Your arm gets tired.
Elbow.
Having a lot, yeah, your elbow, your shoulder, it just, you'd be surprised when you guys, whoever hasn't done it, having a light reel is going to benefit you a lot. It's going to save you, because you really do get tired. I get tired of throwing, even with these rods, you know, if you're just whipping all day. So having a nice light rod is, and a balanced rod, you want something that's, you know, you don't want this rod with a 3500 reel. It's going to be just awkward. So, and that was something years ago. I remember fishing the flats, and I got a pin slammer, you know. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, what an idiot. What did I, you know, I'm catching redfish, but the thing weighs a ton. It's like for, you know, bait fishing for cobia. So really pay attention to your tackle. And again, your tides, your new and full moons are going to be great times to fish, exception for a full moon. And this is with any fishing, especially tarpon. Your full moon, the fish are going to feed more at night. Leading up to the full moon is usually typically good. The fish seem to move around a lot, you know, here, there one day, gone the next. New moons are probably one of my favorites. The nice thing about fishing, I'm going to say in the river in the winter, it's the only time of year that I almost don't care what the tide is, because the water's always moving good. Quarter moon, you got good moving water. There's some spots that I'd rather have a quarter moon because it's just too hard to fish because the tides rip too hard. You're going to have that same situation up by Double Branch and Rocky Creek. They all feeder creeks that got good tide flow. Great fishing in the winter up there too for anybody that doesn't fish it.
Jason, how far up the Little Manatee do you fish?
I have a tower, so you won't see me past the trestle, not unless
You want
I
to
rip it off.
modify it?
I've never fished past the trestle. I've never had a boat to get underneath there.
Yeah.
And I know you can get it open, but I just have nightmares of being stuck on that side with a charter. So I figured that wouldn't be good. I usually don't. There is some good stuff up there. I just don't go up past the trestle. There's plenty of fish on this side. The Big Manatee River is also good. I don't fish that too much. I don't venture much past Miguel Bay, especially since fuel prices shot up. Other good wintertime areas, docks. Docks are great for redfish. If you guys are throwing artificials, please learn how to stop the bait, because people don't like stuff on their docks, right, John?
Right.
I always cringe. I fish and somebody hangs a dock. I'm like, look, man, if you can't, let me do it, because I don't, I know somebody don't want to walk in there and get a hook in their foot or something. So docks are great areas. A lot of the docks here are good. The docks here don't seem to have a whole lot. It seems, especially in the inlet, most of them got sand, just sandy bottom. I think they hold more snook than reds over there, for at least me. I like to find docks that got a lot of rubble around them, maybe some old broken docks. St. Pete's got some really good dock areas for redfish. I don't fish Apollo Beach too much for reds, but there's a lot of good residential stuff in there. Any of them docks, if you're trying to find which docks all look the same, just look at if there's 10 docks, look at the one that looks the oldest and the most beat up, with the most barnacles on it, because that's got the most life to them, the structure they're looking for.
And if you're fishing the docks in Apollo Beach, don't use artificial that's gonna be on the bottom. If you do, try to keep it as far away from the bottom, because there's nothing but oyster down there. And you'll get hung up a gazillion times.
Either that or just use something, you can go in with like a jerkbait or something like this, the shallow oyster. This thing is not gonna sink real fast unless you let it. It's made to kind of just drift, this is made to, you can throw this, if you're in shallow flats, 1 to 2 foot, I mean, you got some grass, it'll go through the grass. It's great for fishing the shallow water flats.
Those float too, don't they? If you don't have a weight on, they'll float with
I
it.
don't know if they float. I don't think with a hook. I'm sure if you threw the bait in the water, but the hook's got somewhat of weight. Never tried it actually. I think you got too much time on your
I know
hands.
the crabs, most of them sink. I know the crabs float that they make.
Do they?
Yeah.
I think
These
they're-
probably
I think-
do that. I've never
I think it
really-
was CA told me that Z-Man had, if you just use like a one-aught hook in them, that you'll float, because he'll almost do like
Well,
a dead.
I'm not gonna go against what he says,
Right.
because all he does is throw artificials. So,
He almost did like a dead stick where you take those flat circle weights, and throw it out there, and it'll suspend up.
he just brought something to mind for, I'm just about done here. Dead sticking's out. Everybody know what dead sticking is? No? Yeah? Okay, dead sticking is where you just flip baits out there and you just let it sit on the bottom, so they call it dead sticking. You can do that with artificials. Berkeley Golf, which I'm not a big fan of, because it costs $7 for 6 of them. Berkeley Golf is a good bait to dead stick. That's the other thing I didn't even bring. And I just opened this. I literally haven't tried it. I got this at ICAST, and I think I'm going to use it because it really stinks. I opened it and smelled it, which is good. Scent, everybody talks about scented baits. A lot of these are Procure, which is pretty good stuff. It's what I got on my boat. I just forgot to bring it. This Z-Man stuff is already pre-scented with Procure, but I like to always scent stuff, especially redfish. They're big on scent. You just stick something out there on the bottom, they'll pick it up on scent. I mean, that's fishing these big schools. You're talking about cut bait, they're picking up on that scent. I mean, they're not typically, they're not going to find that piece of bait buried in grass. They're smelling it. The stinkier, the better for reds. So I really like to go with the scent. Yes, sir.
What size cut of ladyfish would you use?
Just a nice chunk like this.
steak.
Yeah, just a nice little.
Steak.
Yeah, you don't want a piece like that. Yeah, I mean that's anything bigger than that shark bait. But and I usually stay as far as hook size on live bait. Number one, the bait's been really anybody's getting white bait consistently. It's really screwed up this year. I don't know what's going on. A lot of the bait's really small. I've never had to throw a 1/4-inch net in January, December. Well, I'm usually not throwing a net in January, but I threw my 1/4-inch net almost all year. Even at the bridge, I'm having to throw my 3/8, and it's getting Christmas tree. There's a mixture of bigger
Oh.
stuff, but yeah, I'm almost gonna have to make a real heavy 12-foot 1/4-inch net because I gotta
How are you hooking your white bait?
Either-
Nose, back?
mostly nose hook because again, and that's another good question. The white bait you can I usually belly hook them or nose hook them. If you're fishing areas with a lot of tide flow, I usually go through the nose. If you belly hook them, they'll swim down. The problem is that they die faster and you're dragging them against the tide. Where that nose hook, they'll just kind of make their way through it. So I've been nose hooking a lot. Occasionally I'll do a belly hook. If you do a belly hook, you're really going to have to flip your bail and let that bait swim down, which is good. But on charters, I have a hard time explaining that to people and understanding what I'm telling them. So
How about your live shrimp? How are you hooking?
I like a tail hook. Tail hook because I think it swims more natural, but you can head hook them right in front of the little black thing, and then stay on a little better. So, depends. If I'm sheep's head fishing, I don't tail hook. Tail hook that shrimp is, whatever you're doing, whether it's artificials, live bait, whatever, cut bait, well, cut bait don't pertain to this, but you want the bait to look as natural as possible. I think a shrimp tail hook gives that natural kick, and they almost kick across the bottom. When they're head hooked, to me it doesn't look like it's going to be a natural kick. They're going to be kind of pulling themselves. So I typically like to go tail hook. The problem is you go to these pinfish and stuff, and they'll just start eating your baits up. Any more questions?
You mentioned Procure. What flavor?
I don't know.
No.
I think I got the
Mostly
inshore set.
smaller.
Yeah, I don't get ate up with the, I think you have to, I've been in the fishing industry long enough to know that a lot of that stuff is a sales gimmick. And some of it has different scents and all that, but if you, especially, I'm sure, John, you realize this too. You go to the ICAST shows and you see this stuff and year after year, and half of it's a sales pitch. Half of it works, whatever scent you want. I wouldn't go buy 10 different scents and get all technical with it, as long as it's got some stink to it. That thing right there, it's got some stink. It's about to knock me out with it. And this is mullet scent. I got like 5 of these, and I just brought it because it's the only I had in my stuff at home. But I'm gonna try this because it's.
Is that something you apply to the bait?
Yeah, it's actually, this is different. And the guy was.
It's like a chapstick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a chapstick, which is pretty cool. But it
Well,
stinks,
try it.
man.
Get going with that.
Just put it on the back of your hand.
Yeah, that's nasty. I want to try it. It stinks. Get it near me. But just whatever you think. You can't go wrong with like a shrimp or a menhaden scent. I don't think the scents are really that big of a role. It's got some scent to it. I don't know how much different the scents make. I know they make a difference, but that's a guessing game. The gulp, you can buy the gulp stuff. Gulp works really good. I just tell you what, the money they get, it's
Pretty
nuts.
proud of their stuff.
But a lot of people have. I know some really good captains that fish in some tournaments, and they do well in dead stick and gulp. And they won redfish tournaments doing it. So I think a lot of it has to do with confidence. They know that they can do it with that bait, so they do it. And you don't want to venture off too much. Do you have a question? I thought you were gonna say that. Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned talking about schooling reds when they come in for the spawn. Can you talk about when that happens?
Typically you got there's 2 big mullet runs. I can't remember which species. You got one in the spring, one in the fall. I believe these fish follow the mullet run. You get a lot of big schools of mullet. August is a good month for redfish. Everybody fishes for redfish in October. I probably shouldn't say this, but August, September is probably one of the better months for redfish. It's hot as heck, but these fish move in and nobody's fishing for them. And there is a ton of them out there. I mean, that's when a lot of your real big schools, everybody says October. October's good, but I mean, even into July. This year, and every year's different. This year I caught a lot of reds in July. It's just kind of odd. This whole year's been odd, from the bait to catching redfish in July to catching redfish like I am now.
Are you finding them more towards the mouth of the bay or up in the bay
During
during the hotter months? I know up this way,
you
the
get them
water's
all on the
getting
flats. The whole South Shore's got them. St. Pete's got them. I mean, they're moving in. There'll be schools if you can find them out in the Gulf. I mean, somebody, and I don't hold me to this number, but a buddy of mine knows the FWC. He's a captain. They said they spotted 100,000 last year on a school out there. I mean, I don't know how they counted them, but that's what they said. I mean, they were all 40, 45 inch.
Yeah, I've seen them on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, there's just acres. But the thing is, it's kind of like when I was telling you in the bay, you could go there and you could mark that spot on the GPS and come back next day and they're gone. They're not staying there. They're on the move. That's when you can tell the fish on the move when they're feeding and they're just going crazy. They're not going to stay there long. They're not going to stay like that.
Not asking for your numbers, but where and how are you looking for your whitebait? Do you see them coming, or you chum first?
Certain spots, it's all about water temperature. There's certain towers right out of here that hold bait certain times of the year, but some of these towers right off Cockroach hold bait certain times of the year. It's hard to explain. I fish so much that I'm able to stay on top of it. But there's some times where
Do you chum for it?
Yeah, absolutely. You get in the rodeo at some time, what I call rodeo, we just kind of pull up and start throwing. I anchor up, take my time, chum, throw once or twice, black the well out, and you're done.
What's your chum, like oatmeal?
Purina 45. Just comes in like,
that
it's like,
oatmeal mix is too much. If you get
Nah,
the
man.
tropical fish food, it's 50-pound bags of Purina tropical fish food. That you sit there, you put it in a bucket, like a little bait bucket, add a little, like a can of water, or a little bit of water to it, mix it up until it's a nice paste.
you want it to be like wet sand, not mud,
Yep.
like just a very,
You can just go just like this out there and just like,
yeah. And Mr. Nobles and all them probably argue because they're out there with sardines and all that. Man, I get bait just as easy as they do, and they're cutting the can. I mean, sardine, Spanish mackerel, or that, what is it?
Jack Mac.
Jack mackerel, there you go.
Yeah.
That's the Spanish mackerel.
Menhaden oil.
Ben Hayden, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I used to get all
bring the
technical.
sharks.
I used to go, years ago, I'd get whole wheat bread with anise oil.
And it's, all- yeah.
And Jack mackerel. You know how expensive that gets? I can go buy a bag, a 50-pound bag, of
$27.95.
$27.95, and it lasts me about 2 months, and I'm fishing, 25 days a month. Or I can go spend $3 on a loaf and $1 on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little place in there called Four Fish Stuff.
Four fish, yeah.
Please tell them that the South Shore Anglers told you to go there, or that the
If-
Tampa
well,
Outfitters radio show told you, because that helps us when I go in there, they smile at me when I do
Glad to do it, yeah.
And
Like
you wanna
that's
use
the-
it up,
the trick of it.
so the best thing to do, like you guys with a fishing club,
Uh-huh.
get half a dozen to a dozen guys together, buy one
bag.
together and split it up.
Yeah.
Then you keep it fresher that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I did that with cat food one time, and about 6 months later, we had all kind of flies and bugs.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
no, this stuff doesn't.
Yeah, if you really want to get technical, get you some Menhaden oil, put in there. I used to do that, and I just get the powder, throw some water in it, and you know what? I get bait with it. The Menhaden oil helps but I don't know how much difference it makes. I can tell you this: it'll make a difference when you go to throw and you fall because it gets on your deck. So, just go get you a bag of that with some water. Don't make it too milky. Don't make it too dry. If it's too dry, it'll just go all in the air, just like just like damp sand at the beach is what you want it to be like. So, and just mix you a little bit at a time. I typically leave mine wet. Once you get it wet, it's gonna mold.
Yeah.
So you just want to use a little bit of time. I keep mine wet and then get a little mold on, but I use it so much that it just doesn't matter. So.
easiest way to store it is get one of those coffee cans.
That Folgers, little Folgers.
Either that, or you know what I use? It's even better than that. If you got a pool, the chlorine tablets come in a screw-on bucket. I got 2 of them in my boat. I love them, and they got a little screw-on lid, so they don't. The thing about the Folgers thing is the lid pops on, so
Yeah.
you
It's
spill all
too
over
easy
the
to
place.
come off.
Yeah, these screw-ons, they don't come off. So whatever works. It really don't matter. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
About flounder, what do you, how they?
Flounder.
Yeah.
Flounder is a bycatch of anything else I'm fishing for. Flounder, shrimp on the bottom, sand.
If you find a sandy bottom pass and you bump this like he was showing you with that jig,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that doesn't even take nothing, but if you bump that on the bottom, you get flounder. Yeah.
Real slow though, because they're.
Yeah, you want it on the bottom.
We caught one today, and the guy's like, "Am I hung up?" They just grab it and sit on it. So, and I don't like catching them. I don't like keeping them because I don't like cleaning them. They don't fight good, and they're a pain to clean. They're great to eat,
Oh, yeah.
but they're just, and I have no clue why. I think the limit's 12-inch minimum.
Yeah.
Do not keep a 12-inch trout. Don't keep
Nah.
anything
Not
over
worth
2
cleaning.
They're
No.
not bigger than 16.
And customers, they want to
Right.
keep it. I said, no, it's undersized. I just,
Yeah, if they're not 16, 18 inches, they're not worth it.
Doormat.
You go up to Delaware, fish in Delaware Bay, they gotta be 20 inches.
really?
It's 18.5 now this last year.
Was it?
Yeah,
Biggest
flounder
one
is
I
just
recall
something we
was
catch. Oh, wow, we got a flounder. We're fishing for a fish or snow or trout.
Merle's Inlet in South Carolina.
Any more? Did I pass the test?
No,